The Tyranids have wiped out entire star systems, not through luck and not through numbers alone, but through a rank system where each creature fills a specific role. This is not about which creature wins in a fight, it is about why each sits at its level and what happens to everything below it when the creature above is removed. Level 1. Ripper. Nothing in the swarm costs less to make and gives back more value. That is the only reason the Ripper exists, and it is enough. A Ripper is a very small, worm-shaped feeding creature, roughly the size of a large rat, with a hard outer shell, several small clawed limbs, and a wide mouth full of sharp teeth. No real armor, no meaningful combat ability, no intelligence. Codex Tyranids places it at the very bottom of the combat scale with weapon skill 5+ and a 6+ armor save. A weapon skill of 5+ means it misses more often than it hits. A 6+ save means almost any attack kills it outright. These are not design flaws, they describe exactly what this creature is built for. Small feeders are not made to hold positions or lead attacks. Made to eat whatever the rest of the swarm leaves behind, they serve the larger creatures above them like disposable tools. Once a battlefield is cleared, the bigger creatures move on without a second thought. The hive mind, the shared intelligence controlling every Tyranid creature, produces them in massive numbers because replacing any individual one costs almost nothing. What the swarm cannot afford to waste is time. What it can afford to waste is rippers. Some appear before a battle even ends. A flying carrier called a parasite of Mortrex injects its barb ovipositor into enemy infantry. When those targets are destroyed by that specific attack, a fresh Ripper swarm unit is set up within 3 inches of the parasite, putting feeders on the field at the exact moment food becomes available. Others arrive via deep strike, surfacing from underground inside enemy positions before anyone can react. Once they reach living targets, sheer numbers bring those targets down. Chitinous horrors, an aura that radiates from any cluster of them, cuts the objective control of enemy models caught in close range, turning even a minor concentration of feeders into a problem that cannot be ignored. When a battle ends, the real work begins. The final stage of consumption is devastatingly fast, and these feeders do not stop until there's nothing left. After every battle, they spread across the planet's surface in massive groups, eating the wounded, the dead, and everything else in their path. Combined movement creates a vibration in the ground detectable at a distance. Once they process enough material, they enter digestion pools where their own bodies break down into raw organic matter, pumped up to the Tyranid fleet in orbit through capillary towers that grow from the planet's surface like enormous funnels. This is not a side effect of the invasion, that is the point of it. Everything the swarm destroys feeds the next phase of the attack. Their use does not stop at the planet's surface. Imperial records describe boarding swarms that include gene stealers and rippers, sweeping vessels clear of life. Nothing is left behind, nothing is wasted. The book Devastation of Baal records the final outcome on a planetary level. Planets processed this way never support life again. Worlds outside the Imperium's knowledge have already been stripped bare, stripped down to the bacterial level. By the time the Tyranid ships leave, nothing remains but a cold, lifeless rock that will never support life again. Not a ruin, a world that has simply been used up and discarded. Rippers sit at level 1, not because they're harmless, but because they serve every level above them without being able to replace any of them. Level 2 is where the first real fighters appear, and the gap between a creature that eats and one that fights is the exact distance between these two ranks. Level 2. Termagant and Hormagaunt. These two creatures are the first in the swarm designed specifically to fight, and that single difference is why they outrank the feeders. A Termagant is a small, 4-limbed creature, roughly the size of a large dog, with a hunched posture and a living biological gun built into its front limbs. A ranged fighter built to attack from a distance and wear the enemy down over time. A Hormagaunt is built differently, with large, curved blade arms replacing the front limbs and a body built for speed above anything else. A close combat creature designed to reach the enemy fast and cut them apart before they can organize a response. Both types move in very large groups and are used in the millions. Termagants were originally bred to patrol the tight inner passages of Tyranid hive ships, hunting intruders in confined spaces. Their fighting style reflects that origin. They outflank targets, fire from multiple angles, and reduce enemy numbers through constant pressure rather than a single overwhelming push. Hormagaunts were bred as shock troops, dropped onto planets in their billions to charge at defensive lines, force defenders to spend their ammunition, and tear through whatever stands in their way. Many strong defensive positions have been buried under literal mountains of their bodies. Among a Termagant's weapon options, the Flesh Borer fires biting insects at the target. The creature's Devourer fires more shots at closer range, prioritizing volume of fire over penetration depth. Spinefists fire 2 short-range shots at once from both limbs, and further options exist beyond these 3. Together, these choices let the ranged fighters hold and contest ground that level 1 feeders cannot occupy. When enemies end a move with 9 inches, Skulking Horrors lets the unit reposition up to 6 inches, provided he is not already engaged, keeping these fighters useful even after the enemy is closed in. A Hormagaunt moves at 10 inches per turn, and through Bounding Leap, it can charge in the same turn it is already advanced. These creatures are fast enough to run down humans trying to flee on open ground. Their close combat variant brings the same pressure at a different speed and range. Their blade arms move fast enough to catch most infantry before the target can react, and when they arrive in large enough numbers, individual defenders rarely survive the contact. Recorded engagements describe them coming in such density that visibility at ground level dropped to near zero, the creatures filling every gap between buildings and natural cover without slowing. Using both types in massive numbers is how the Hive Mind approaches this level. Individually cheap to field, these fighters let the swarm fill an entire battlefield, drain the defenders of ammunition, and still keep heavier creatures in reserve. Their dead pile up in corridors and passages, physically blocking movements and slowing counterattacks. By the time larger creatures arrive, the defenders have already spent most of what they have. One weakness locks both types at level 2. When the synapse creature directing them is killed, the larger organism that carries the Central Intelligence's orders to the battlefield, both types fall apart immediately. What this looks like in practice is documented in the novel Warriors of Ultramar. When the synapse link between a hive ship and its surrounding bioships was cut, the attending vessels paused mid-attack and drifted. Smaller organisms operating inside them returned to basic instinct within seconds. On the ground, the same pattern plays out with the small swarm fighters. A structured attack turns into scattered, random movement. Gargoyles that had been flying in precise coordinated patterns broke apart and spread across the sky in all directions, each one acting alone. Hormagaunts that had been pressing forward as a single force stopped and began moving individually, easy targets for soldiers who had been barely holding moments before. Cut that connection, and the swarm loses its direction. Level 3 is the creature that provides it. Level 3. Tyranid Warrior. The Tyranid Warrior is the first creature in the swarm with genuine independent intelligence. That alone pushes it above every creature ranked below it. A Tyranid Warrior is a large, upright creature standing roughly 3 meters tall. It has a thick, hard shell covering its chest and back, multiple weapon-bearing limbs, capable of using both long-range living guns and close combat blades at the same time. Unlike the creatures below it, a warrior does not act on basic instinct alone. Each one is independently intelligent, meaning it makes its own decisions during battle rather than waiting for direction. Their connection to the controlling mind gives them advanced fighting ability and lets them act as control points that keep nearby creatures organized. Regarded as the backbone of many Tyranid invasions, the synaptic link they carry imbues them with advanced martial abilities while simultaneously letting them serve as organizing nodes for the wider swarm. Producing one requires significantly more investment than a single swarm creature, and it also requires dedicated care during development, a level of investment that mass-produced creatures below it never receive. When the Central Intelligence commits to making one, it is not building a single fighter. It is building the control point an entire section of the swarm depends on. Kill a Tyranid Warrior and every creature within its control range starts losing direction immediately. Imperial forces know this. Their briefings prioritize warrior removal before anything else. During the assault on Lycios, documented in the book Shield of Baal Exterminatus, these creatures were the captains that held the swarms together and drove them relentlessly into the defending forces. Moving at the front of charges into defender lines, they fired living rounds from biological cannons while hacking apart defenders with bone blades. When Blood Angel's officers began cutting them out of the swarm, the effect was immediate. Groups of Gaunts without a controlling presence became disorganized, herded into kill zones rather than pressing the attack. Survivors of Lycios named them crowned beasts, nomadic people who saw them rising from the ocean at the front of the tide and named them after the ridge crest on their skulls. Weapon options cover every range. At 24 inches, the Death Spitter fires armor-piercing rounds. At 18 inches, the Devourer fires 5 shots of Brain Leech worms. Blast rounds from the Barbed Strangler hit multiple group targets in one shot. In close combat, Bone Swords cut through armor and deal extra damage with each hit, while Scything Talons are built for sustained close-range pressure through their sheer attack profile. A warrior can threaten any target type at any distance, a flexibility that the creatures below it, which mostly operate in only one range or one role, do not have. Adaptive Instincts lets these creatures adjust at the start of each fight phase. The unit selects either rerolling hit rolls of 1 or rerolling saving throws of 1 for that phase, letting them lean into offense or survival depending on what the moment demands. No other creature at or below this level carries that kind of in-battle flexibility. They lead the main body of the swarm. Level 4 is a creature that works ahead of all of that, moving alone through places the warrior could never reach, long before the first swarm creature lands. Level 4. Lictor. Level 4 operates before the invasion begins. By the time defenders find out it was there, it has already done its job. A Lictor is a tall, multi-limbed ambush creature with 2 main legs, multiple weapon arms, feeder tendrils arranged around its mouth, and a body covered in cells that constantly shift color to match its surroundings. No heavy armor, no ranged weapons, no role in directing other creatures. Its entire design serves one function: enter a defended location without being seen, find a specific target, destroy or gather from it, and leave the opening for everything that follows. Built as a redesigned version of the Tyranid Warrior, it is rebuilt specifically for moving in secretly, gathering information, and killing key targets. A core part of its function is breaking open the skulls of chosen victims and pulling stored information out through those feeder tendrils. Command locations, defensive layouts, positions of power systems, weak points in walls and shields, all of this is fed back and used to shape the incoming attack before the main swarm arrives. Its body makes it near impossible to detect. Color-shifting cells on the hunter's surface produce near-perfect camouflage even in full daylight. Organ clusters beneath the skin reshape themselves to match nearby surfaces like stone or vegetation. Special arrangements of hairs along its limbs muffle the sound of its own movement. Its outer shell is shaped at a fine level to cut down on the disturbance it creates moving through air. It gives off no heat, leaves no scent, makes almost no vibration, and its psychic connection carries so little signal that it reads the same as background noise. Every destruction system the Imperium has developed, the Lictor was built to defeat. The novel The Devastation of Baal records one sprinting across open desert at night without rest, then burying itself in sand just outside a fortified prison and waiting without movement for the moment an opportunity opened. This creature does not act on urgency. It waits as long as it takes, and when it moves, it has already chosen exactly what it is going to do and exactly where it's going to be. What followed inside the Arx Angelicum is documented in the same source. Working through a forgotten underground passage beneath the fortress wall, the Lictor led a group deeper into the structure, with accompanying creatures using corrosive acid to breach the reinforced barriers blocking the route. Once inside, the group reached the device generating the structure's void shields. The device was destroyed. Within minutes, the invasion's next phase began, the one that had been held back entirely by those shields. Defenders on the walls had no idea what had changed until the attacks they had been stopping started getting through. After removing the target, the creature releases chemical signals that pull other Tyranid creatures directly to the gap it created and increase the force of their charge when they arrive. Individual hunters like this are treated as completely replaceable, produced and discarded the way a human body sheds skin cells. If completing the mission requires the creature to die in the process, it does so without any change to the plan. In direct combat, lone operative and stealth make it extremely difficult to target at range. Fights First lets it strike before the target can respond when it enters close combat. Weapon skill 2+, 6 attacks, strength 7, armor penetration -2. These numbers rarely come into play because the target almost never knows the Lictor is there until the attack has already begun. Level 4 opens the way in. Level 5 walks through that opening and destroys everything on the other side. Level 5, Carnifex. Nothing below level 5 can absorb a full volley of anti-tank fire and keep moving. The Carnifex does this regularly, and defenders who do not account for it often do not survive the mistake. A Carnifex is a very large, four-limbed assault creature covered in thick, layered armor plates, several meters tall, moving on two powerful rear legs, using two enormous front arms as both weapons and battering tools. No role in stealth or information gathering, no function in organizing other creatures, no real speed to speak of. Its entire purpose is to physically destroy whatever the creatures below it cannot break through. Among the most regularly used assault creatures in the Tyranid fleets, these creatures have appeared in invasion forces for centuries without meaningful change. Proven and reliable, fielded in large numbers. Toughness 9, a 2+ save, and 8 wounds make them the hardest organisms to put down at this level of the swarm. Bringing one down requires a serious and continued effort, and during that effort, it is still moving forward and still attacking. Blistering Assault pushes this further. Each time one of these creatures is hit by enemy shooting, it can immediately move up 8 inches towards the attacker, meaning damage does not slow it down, it just makes it angrier and closer. Weapons cover several methods of destruction. The heavy venom cannon fires toxic rounds at 36-inch range, strength 9, armor penetration -2, enough to damage vehicles and heavily armored infantry from across the field. Its crushing claw deals D3+3 damage per hit, enough to tear apart armored vehicles in close combat. A paired set of Devourers fires 12 shots of brain leech worms at short range, each shot delivering a parasitic worm into the target. Bioplasma delivers rounds that hit multiple group targets at once. Each weapon option exists because a different type of target needs a different approach, and the Carnifex is designed to be adapted to whatever the swarm currently cannot break. Even after a Carnifex suffers catastrophic damage, it can keep moving. Its basic nerve system does not register that the fight should stop. Defenders who assumed a down head meant a finished threat have paid for that assumption. One of the clearest recorded examples comes from the book Imperial Armor Volume 4, The Anphelion Project. An Imperial Dreadnought, one of the Imperium's armored walking war machines, faced a Carnifex at close range and tore one of its limbs completely away at the joint. Bleeding heavily, the beast staggered. Rather than stop, it drove its remaining claws into the combat walker repeatedly. A blow caught the war machine's right arm, ripping off its cannon and setting the fuel supply on fire. Both were burning, both kept fighting. Point-blank fire from the dreadnought tore away chunks of armor and flesh with every round, and the record states plainly that the beast appeared ignorant of the damage each shell was causing. With its last strength, it drove a single claw into the combat walker's armored chest cavity and punctured it. Both fell together into the water below and did not get up, missing a limb, on fire, and absorbing direct fire for over a minute. The creature had still landed the killing blow. Separate recorded engagements in the Devastation of Baal book shows groups of these assault creatures doing something even more unnerving, being used not to fight, but to physically build. Under continuous heavy weapons fire from a fortress wall, they methodically push piles of dead bodies towards its base using flattened claws shaped like dozer blades, building a ramp for the smaller creatures behind them. They continued doing this under fire the entire time, not attempting to fight back, simply heaping the dead until the ramp reached the top. There is also a legendary variant known as Old One Eye, first recorded during the First Tyrannic War, confirmed killed many times across the centuries, and back each time. Whether the central intelligence rebuilds it from stored genetic material or the same body simply recovers has never been established. Old One Eye is the clearest proof that this tier of creature is not just a weapon, it is a problem the Imperium cannot permanently end. They are the blunt tool of the swarm. What comes next is the opposite: precise, independent, and already planning the assault before it begins. Level 6. Norn Emissary. By the time the main Tyranid fleet arrives at a target world, the Norn Emissary has often already been there, working through its defenses ahead of the swarm. A Norn Emissary is a very large, four-armed creature with a long body and powerful limbs. It moves faster than its size suggests it should. It carries close combat weapons and psychic abilities, and most importantly, this creature operates on its own judgment. It does not wait for orders from above. It sets its own targets, directs nearby creatures toward them, and adjusts its approach based on what it finds on the ground. The capacity to think and decide independently is the specific quality that places it above every creature ranked below it. Its function is precise: designing the opening stages of an invasion, building the plan to trap a system's defenders before the main swarm arrives. It is not sent to fight the battle, it is sent to determine what the battle will look like before the rest of the swarm gets there. The novel Leviathan records one of these creatures in full operation on the world of Regium. Imperial survivors named this individual the Harbinger, first described in the book as a four-armed colossus, godlike in size, taller than the surrounding forests, with bone blades jutting from a ridged skull. One side of its face had been burned before Regium, charred down to the exposed muscle, but the creature moved with what one Ultramarine described as cool efficiency. It was not frenzied, it was not rushing, it was working through a plan. Before the main Tyranid fleet arrived in the system, it had already disabled an Imperial warship's engines and weapons batteries by targeting specific systems. Then, it began hunting individual commanders, separating each one from the forces they led. An Imperial officer studying its movements recorded the observation that would be passed on to every subsequent commander facing this type of creature. Its presence did not mean the invasion was approaching, it meant the first phase was already complete. When it appeared, the opening work had been done. What followed was not preparation, it was an execution. Their assigned tasks go beyond killing. They can be sent to capture specific individuals or retrieve important information. Singular purpose lets them be given one of two assignments before a battle. Either focus on a specific target and reroll all attacks against it throughout the entire fight, or designate a key objective marker and hold it alone, gaining Feel No Pain 5+ and objective control value of 15 while within range of it. One of its adaptations, Unnatural Resilience, gives them a built-in chance to reduce mortal wound damage, the hardest category to stop in the game. Stopping one costs more than firepower, and the novel, veteran soldier Baraka eventually brought the Harbinger down, but not through a conventional fight. Carrying a heavy casket, he leapt at the Harbinger as it stood over the open shaft, and the record describes Baraka still plunging his blade into the creature as both of them fell into the darkness below. The creature was stopped. The soldier died. His fellow soldiers watching from above saw the two of them disappear into the shaft together. By the time this happened, the planet's key defenses had already been broken. The Harbinger had finished its work before it was brought down. One limit exists that keeps this creature at level 6 rather than the top. The Norn Emissary does not manage the wider swarm. It has one assigned mission and works as a focused agent rather than an overall commander. Even with independent judgment, it operates only in service of goals set by the creature above it in the hierarchy. What the governing creature is, and what happens the moment it falls, is what separates level 7 from everything else on this list. Level 7. Hive Tyrant. Remove the Hive Tyrant from the battlefield and the swarm loses its governing mind. Every creature below it starts losing coordination within seconds. A Hive Tyrant is a massive creature standing taller than a Space Marine dreadnought, covered in thick armor plates, carrying both long-range weapons and large close combat blades. Genuine intelligence, the capacity to give specific commands to every creature within a set range, and a direct psychic connection to the Hive Mind used to manage every level below it in real time. Where one stands on a battlefield, the swarm around it becomes a single coordinated force rather than a collection of individual creatures. What this level of control looks like in practice is documented in the novel The Last Hunt. One of these governing creatures had just emerged from its landing pod onto a planet's surface when it rose to its full height and released a single organizing signal. Groups of Gaunts that had been moving in separate directions without coordination swept out from the landing area in all directions, their movements suddenly unified. Within minutes, the entire brood was organized and moving toward the nearest concentration of prey, guided by synapse signals and scent trails left by advanced scouts. Cut to the opposite situation recorded in the same source. When the synapse link of a controlling creature was cut during a separate engagement, gargoyles flying overhead lost all the coordinated movement that had made them dangerous. Each one spread out individually across the sky. Hormagaunts on the ground stopped pressing the attack and became easy to manage one by one. A White Scars officer watching this happen described it in one line: "The synapse link is broken. They will become disorganized." That is why the White Scars developed a specific tactic built entirely around removing this one type of creature, not to fight the swarm, to behead it. The tactic is called Khan Alak, which translates as King Killer. Jurga, master of the War Council, recorded its meaning directly in the same source: to personally seek out the master of your enemies, to humble him in combat before his best warriors, and take his head. No strategy, he wrote, could better represent the spirit of Great Chigoris. That an entire tactical method was built for the sole purpose of eliminating one category of creature shows more clearly than any stat can how much its presence changes the outcome of a battle. Producing one requires more investment than any other creature in this ranking. Within a Tyranid battle group, Hive Tyrants serve as the primary command organisms, each anchoring its own section of the swarm with a level of authority no other creature in this ranking carries. Stats reflect that investment: toughness 10, 10 wounds, weapon skill, and ballistic skill both 2+, leadership 7+, a 2+ armor save, and a 4+ save against attacks that bypass armor entirely. Onslaught is a psychic aura that radiates from the governing creature at all times, granting every ranged weapon within 6 inches the assault keyword, meaning those units can fire even after advancing. Creatures that would have otherwise have to choose between moving and shooting no longer face that choice while a Hive Tyrant is directing them. Will of the Hive Mind lets the governing creature issue a command that allows a nearby unit to benefit from a strategic order at no additional cost, compressing the decision-making cycle of the swarm in ways that nothing below level 7 can replicate. Surrounding it at all times are the Tyrant Guard, dedicated bodyguard creatures bred solely to protect the governing creature. The Shield of Baal Leviathan novel records these organisms as having no eyes, their eyeless heads a direct product of how completely their existence has been given over to another creature's will. Guardian Organism reflects this in practice. While the governing creature leads a unit of Tyrant Guard, it gains Feel No Pain 5+, absorbing damage that would otherwise reach the commander directly. They do not merely stand between their charge and harm, they physically absorb it. Then there is the Swarm Lord. Kill it once, and you've made it stronger. Kill it again, and the same thing happens. At the Battle of Cold Steel Ridge, this ancient commander personally wounded Chapter Master Marnius Calgar of the Ultramarines, forcing the entire campaign against Hive Fleet Behemoth onto a different course. Codex Tyranids confirms that record directly. When killed, its mind is absorbed back into the central intelligence and used to build a new body. Each new version carries everything the last one learned. It has presided over the destruction of entire civilizations, and every time the Imperium has killed it, the replacement arrives more dangerous than the one before. Domination of the Hive Mind radiates from this ancient commander as a psychic aura. Every friendly Tyranid unit within 9 inches counts as being within synapse range, extending the reach of the controlling will far beyond what a standard governing creature alone can manage. Its Bone Sabers strike at strength 10 with armor penetration -2 and deal D3 damage per wound, enough to threaten heavily armored targets in a single sustained engagement. At Cold Steel Ridge, Calgar survived. Separately, during the wider defense of Macragge that same war, The first company of the Ultramarines was killed to the last person holding the polar fortresses. 2 wounds from the same war, neither healed quickly. When any form of the Hive Tyrant falls, the collapse begins immediately. Level 1 feeders lose direction, small swarm fighters scatter, warriors become disorganized, lictors lose their signal, Carnifex is pushed forward with no assigned target. Sections of the swarm begin attacking each other. Deadly Demise triggers a body explosion that damages everything nearby when the creature falls. The invasion does not stop instantly, but the coordination that made it dangerous fractures, and without a governing mind to restore it, the swarm cannot recover. By raw numbers, the Norn emissary below it survives more damage. In immediate physical destruction, it causes more. In precision, nothing else in the swarm operates at the same level. None of that changes what the governing creature does, that none of them can. Hold every level in the system inside a single operating will and drive it forward without stopping. That is what makes the Hive Tyrant the only creature on this list whose removal breaks the invasion at its foundation, not slowing it, but breaking it. If you want to see how the Imperium built its answer to exactly this kind of threat, the Deathwatch video covers the one group specifically trained to hunt alien organisms at the synapse level, and what it actually cost them to do it. And if you want to see the same ranking system applied to the warriors fighting on the other side of these battles, the 7 levels of Space Marines breaks down what separates the weakest of them from the strongest, and why each step up the chain changes how they fight.